Hi, BookTube. It's Lori. Welcome back to my channel, Books, Ink, and Paper. Today, I am excited because I've really been thinking about this a lot. We're going to talk about books that are set in a place or a home or the home plays a significant part of the plot. I love books about homes where homes are a character or buildings are a character. And so this is really an exciting filming for me because I want to share some of my favorites with you over the years. And indeed, one I'm also reading now. So let's get started. So the first one we'll talk about is the one I'm reading now, which is Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. I got this on ebook from my library and I need to really I can't wait to get to it after I finish filming this today because it has a limited time for me, but it's a new release. It came out, I think, June 30th or not too long ago, maybe in July. But it is set in the 1950s, and it's the story of Naomi, who is a Mexican socialite. Her family comes from a great deal of money, and her father comes or asks to speak to her one night when she comes home from a party and tells her that her cousin has written a letter that's very disturbing, and he's worried about her, and she's recently married, and so he asks Naomi to go and visit and check on her because he's responsible for her. Her parents have died. And so she goes to this home called High Place in another city, and it is run down and moldy, and it's dark with no electricity, literally, although I think they have electricity, but they don't use it. And it's weird, quirky kinds of characters in the house, and she's trying to uncover what's going on with her cousin and if she's really sick or not sick. I love it because the home is really described in great detail, from the gardens and the area around the home, as well as the interior of the home, and it takes on its own stand or its own self as a character as soon as she arrives. I am really enjoying it, and I can't say yet how I will feel about it, but it's rich and beautifully written, and it's written in a classic style of literature, so it doesn't read like a contemporary novelist would write, although Silvia Moreno Garcia is a contemporary novelist of ours, but I just adore it. I really recommend it. The next two are both by the same author. So the first one is The Dutch House by Ann Patchett. I read this last year and it was one of my most anticipated in 2019, and it did not disappoint. I really like Ann Patchett as an author, and this follows the Conroy family. Cyril is a World War II veteran who comes out and begins to acquire some wealth that he had not had before, whereas the people that owned the Dutch house lost their wealth. This was kind of a similar situation to what happened in England. The upper class sort of lost a good deal of their asset after the war, and the lower class or lower middle class were able to acquire some wealth in ways that they had not before. So Cyril buys this home, and it was owned by this Dutch couple, and it was called the Dutch House, and he loves it and wants to renovate it, and his wife hates it and doesn't want to live there at all. And it's a story of them and what happens to her and what happens to the children and how long they keep this house. And while they're not stuck in the house the entire time, they spend a lot of time reminiscing and talking about the house. It is clearly its own character. It has this rich description to it. It has a feel to it. Of course, there's a love of it and a hatred of it. It becomes a contentious piece of the plot in a lot of ways. And oh man, it did not disappoint. And this actually, the cover, which I love, is a cover of a portrait that was in the house. So just all the things about this make this house such a strong character that I will never forget. I love it. Similarly, and yet differently, Ann Patchett wrote Balcanto. which was published a long time ago. And Balcanto was one that took me a bit to get through, and not because the writing wasn't great. It was a really slow burn for me, and I just put it down for a really long period of time. It just wasn't lighting me up. But in the end, when I got back to it, I fell in love with it. So Balcanto is the story of some folks in a South American country that's never named who are coming together for a birthday party for a Japanese businessman. And I think not the ambassador, but what they call the charge d'affaires, which is the second in command to the ambassador. He's throwing a birthday party for this Japanese business person. And I think there's a hope that they will have negotiate some sort of a mutually beneficial deal for that country economically. But nevertheless, he comes in with his translator. They hire this opera singer who is a favorite of this businessman's, and they're all gathering for this big party, and some hostages or some terrorists come in and take them hostage. It's the story of their time as hostages and the negotiation with the terrorist group and what happens within that space and how they try to start to, because they can't leave, to start to create a normal routine to whatever degree they can, how they relate and make friendships with each other that they wouldn't have if they had only come together for that one night, and how they begin to make relationships with the people who are holding them hostage. Fascinating. And I guess it's a good read for right now because it creates this new normal for them, if you like that term. I'm not a big fan of it, but it is kind of coming to terms with what your current situation is and adapting to it is a big part of the plot. Just the character development is fantastic, but the place in which they are, the outdoor places, the indoor places, the place in which the country setting is, the place that the others come from and what influenced them culturally and their ethnicities and their way of being with each other is just lovely. The Turn of the Key by Ruth Ware was an advanced reader's copy I received when it was coming out, and I have not yet purchased it in physical form. It was one of my favorite Ruth Ware's. I like all of her novels. I really do. And I know for a lot of people she's hit and miss, but this one was probably my favorite. It is a retelling, so to speak, or a recrafting of The Turn of the Screw by Henry James. The Turn of the Screw by Henry James I also read last year just to sort of remember what the differences were and the similarities were. But The Turn of the Key is a modern day setting. It's a home that is a smart home. A nanny named Rowan applies to be a nanny for two children for a couple who travels a lot for work, and they have redone this home on this moor in Scotland, I think is the setting, and they have modernized everything. It's big open windows, as I recall. It had electronic everything. You locked the doors electronically. You had an app which controlled everything. There were cameras and lots of things, and even some things on the grounds that play a part. So the whole house is significantly its own character and is a part of the challenge that this main character, Rowan, is facing, because some things are happening within the house that she's not controlling, she's not doing, and so she's noticing these things, and she befriends the groundskeeper, Jack Grant, and she's trying to investigate with him kind of what's happening in the house, and is it really happening or is it her imagination. Just a neat kind of a creepy thriller, a little bit of, I mean, there's a flair of horror to it, I guess, and it was delicious. It was really, really good. Lots of twists and turns, and a lot of people who didn't like Ruth Ware before liked her after The Turn of the Key. Where'd You Go, Bernadette by Maria Semple. I've talked about it before. I've talked about it before, but this one is about Bernadette, certainly, and her family, her daughter and her husband, who's a Microsoft guru, and they live in Seattle at the top of an old boarding school that they are trying to convert into a home. Bernadette is an architect, but she's not been working for a while. She's been a stay-at-home mom, and she's taken on this home as her new project. She's a little off, Bernadette is. So it's told in emails, letters, it's an epistolary piece, reports, police reports, text, kind of, it's really told in all of these various ways of writing that unfold and unfurl this plot, which is just cute and funny at times and sad and poignant too. So Bernadette is really struggling, coping with her relationship with her teenage daughter and the neighbors and the private school neighbor people, and at times her husband, and she's going a little crazy and she leaves. She just disappears. And all of the emails, texts, all of the things that you read internally are designed to try to help you figure out what happened to her. They did make it into a movie. I didn't love it so much, but this book remains one of my favorites that I've ever read. It's very entertaining. So right now, if you're looking for a kind of a diversion that makes you laugh during the quarantine period of time, this is it. And you know I had to talk about this one, Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, one of my all-time favorites. It's a classic romance suspense novel, which is set all in the home called Manderley. The main character of this novel is not named Rebecca. Rebecca is the dead wife of the man that she marries, and you never discover what her name is. So it's a really unique way of writing this story about this woman that you never kind of learn much about, but you learn a lot about the house and you learn a lot about Rebecca. This creepy cover really does kind of put you in the mood for what you will discover about this creepy house, and how it becomes something of its own entity is brilliantly unfolded in this novel, not written when you might think it was written because of the language, again, the classic languaging that is used in this novel, but it was published originally in 1938. So it's not quite as old as it sometimes seems to the readers. I enjoy this every time I reread it, and I highly recommend it. It also has one of my favorite first lines of any novel. Last night I dreamt I went to Manderley again. A little bit of foreshadowing there. Lovely, lovely work by Daphne du Maurier. And the last one I did talk about a lot recently, but I just finished it, is Home Before Dark. This was a great read. I've said this before, I'll say it again. The home is clearly a prevalent character, which I think is even better when it's a creepy kind of horror story. It is set in two ways, a book within a book about the home that they lived in, and he writes about their experience before they fled, and then the father dies and he leaves the home to his daughter, and she goes back to redo the home, and she doesn't believe any of the things that he talks about actually happened when she was a child, and so she's just going in to flip it and then discover some things about the home that are concerning to her. I enjoyed it tremendously, and the home is a great character. The rooms, the grounds, the pieces of the descriptions about the way it's designed, the windows, the nuances of it, the darkness that you feel around it. Yeah, super job. So those are my recommendations for this time where we're all kind of stuck in our own places and maybe don't leave our homes as much as we once did, or we're considering them a little bit differently because they are sort of so much a part of our everyday existence. As I've said before, I work from home, so being at home more isn't quite as upsetting to me as it is, I know, for some people. And I am noticing that sometimes I'm just longing to break free of the four walls. And so these novels are great for those nights when you're not able to go anywhere and you're just looking for a diversion and a read about the home, where the home really stands alone as its own character, and just, you know, just to really get into a new place through a book, into a new home through a book is always fun for me. Thanks for watching. Let me know what your favorite novels about homes as characters are. I can't wait to hear. You guys have the best recommendations. And as always, happy reading. Bye.